Illinois County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. The first order of business is to stand for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good morning, everybody, and anybody that's present with us, and also anybody who may be watching on the YouTube channel. It is Tuesday, June 4th. We have a fairly short agenda today, but who knows where it ends up. But first order of business is to approve the agenda as presented. I'd entertain a motion to, was it Commissioner Gardner? Or
Yep. I'll second that.
Commissioner Gardner moves on the agenda. Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The next item is the consent agenda, which consists of approval of the minutes from the last meeting, the approval of the auditor's warrants and claims, the supplemental nutrition assistance program joint powers agreement amendment, and if none of those are to be pulled from this agenda and placed on the regular agenda, I would accept a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I so move to accept the consent agenda.
Commissioner Berg moves on the consent agenda. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, first order of general business is Supporting Hands Nurse Family Partnership. Nikki Prosch, Executive Director. Are you going to introduce?
I was just going to give their presentation.
Oh, okay. And now I have to find my spot back. Lacey Severson, welcome. And when you get to the podium, if you would state your name and who you're representing, even though we kind of did,
Okay.
for the record and for those watching. Thank you.
Sure, all right,
And
thank you.
welcome.
I'm Nikki Prosch. I'm the Executive Director with Supporting Hands Nurse Family Partnership. I have an office in Olivia, Minnesota, and then I also have an office in Lincoln County over by Lake Benton, Minnesota. So thanks for having me. I'll let my supervisor introduce.
I'm Lacey Severson, and my office is in Douglas County in Alexandria, and I supervise the team that's kind of in this direction and the 2 nurses that are housed here in Kennewick County.
Okay, so today I'm going to give you a really kind of quick synopsis of the program as a whole. There's a lot more to it, but what I can squeeze into 15 minutes. And then we'll talk a little bit about Candy Ojai, and then even our organization as a whole and the 21 counties that we represent. So overall, Supporting Hands Nurse Family Partnership, what we do is we implement the national program called Nurse Family Partnership. So basically, our organization pays a licensure fee to the National Service Office to implement the evidence-based program. So I'll give you a little information of what that program entails. So the founder of our program is Dr. David Olds. So over 38 years ago, he was working in an inner city daycare with 4 and 5-year-olds, and he was seeing a lot of behavioral issues with the children, and kind of got to thinking, like, is there something I can do about this right now? And he did some research that really dug into what the foundation of our program is, but he found that there's something that needs to happen earlier before they hit 4 and 5, because he was finding that in his words was it's too late to do anything about some of these behaviors. So really the Nurse Family Partnership program capitalizes on this magic window, which when our program we work specifically with pregnant moms, and I'll explain more how long of a relationship that is. So this quote on this slide is directly from Dr. David Olds, saying there's a magic window during pregnancy. It's a time when there's a desire to be a good mother and raise a healthy, happy child, creates motivation to overcome incredible obstacles, including poverty, instability, or abuse with the help of a well-trained nurse. So overall, our program has 3 main goals that the program focuses on. So one of those is improving pregnancy outcomes. So that includes things like carrying that baby to term. If the mother was maybe smoking, helping that mother quit smoking. So things that relate overall to the health of that mom while they're pregnant. Another goal is improving child health and development. So an example of an outcome here would be maybe decreased learning development or things that that child may experience with behaviors. So those are some specific examples of that outcome. And then the last one, improving economic self-sufficiency of the family. So an example of this would be maybe if the mom isn't employed, our nurse would work with that mom to find a job and maybe make some plans for the future of what their future is going to look like with that child. So our program in the house, so we have specifically trained nurses. So with the exception of myself, the whole staff are all trained nurses in the Nurse Family Partnership Program. So we have intensive training that as soon as they're onboarded with our program, they attend a training with our National Service Office to really get trained on the Nurse Family Partnership model. It's proven, so since Dr. David Olds kind of initiated his research during, like I mentioned, 38 plus years ago. There's been extensive research on the program, really looking at those outcomes of the program and making sure that that time the nurse spends with the client achieves the outcomes that the program has proven over time. And then it is intensive, so our nurses go in the home and work with the clients one-on-one, starting during those, during pregnancy, so right when we get referrals at different times during the pregnancy, but around that 28 weeks is when our nurses start going in the homes and working with that pregnant client, and then they stay with that client through when the child turns 2. And that's what we call graduating the program. So unless the client would, end service or drop out of the program, the goal is for us to work with that client until their child turns 2. So it's, 2.5 year relationship that our nurses have with the clients. And then the last one is very timely, which I'll elaborate in a little more on the next slide, but it's really during those first 1,000 days of that child's life. And that's where this kind of goes. So during those first 1,000 days, there's things that you might not remember during your first 1,000 days of your life, but those things may have impacted where you are today lifelong. So it's really an important brain development and essential function of that child during that. So if there's extreme adversity, those stressors are something that child can carry with them for the rest of their life. So our nurses work to kind of help overcome some of that adversity with the clients and the child during those first 1,000 days and help provide stable caring relationships for lifelong development. So this is always my favorite slide and I feel like the most impactful. So on the slide, it'll show some different development. The different lines show different forms of development. So the blue line shows the sensory pathways, so vision and hearing development. The green line shows language development. And then that kind of pinkish red line shows higher cognitive function development. And then that gray box that kind of goes around those lines is the 30-month period is basically NFP intervention time with that client and with that child. So you see in all 3 of those different developmental stages, NFP is working with that child during the peaks of those developmental lines. So I feel like this is just really impactful because it really does impact that brain development, sensory pathway, and our nurses are there to help kind of guide that learning and guide the path for those different development experiences. So talking just a little more specifically about our organization, as a layer of the national program. So the overall mission of our program is to promote healthy babies and self-sufficient families by providing home visiting services to first-time pregnant women. This shows just an organizational chart. So Supporting Hands is made up of a joint powers board. So we have one county commissioner, Commissioner Gardner, represents Candy Ojai, from each of the 21 counties that serves on our board. From there, we have the representation of our National Service Office, which I mentioned is they oversee the fidelity and implementation of the program as a whole across the nation. We work closely with Renville County. They're our fiscal host. So we work closely with them on a lot of operational management. Then there's myself, and we have the steering committee, which is comprised of public health directors and public health staff in those 21 counties. And then we have 2 nurse supervisors, Lacey, who's here today, and then Katie, who's in Morris, Minnesota, that supervise nurses kind of more regionally based on where the nurses are located. And then if you're a visual person, this is just a map showing the 21 counties in Minnesota, so southwest, south central area of Minnesota. So this is the area, the 21 counties where we have a nurse that serves the county. So of course, in the more rural locations, we don't necessarily have a nurse in every county, but they travel to those counties. And in Candy, Ohio, we'll talk a little more. Right now we have 2 full-time staff, and we're looking on adding a position as well due to need. So that led right into this. So just at our May Joint Powers Board meeting, I proposed the addition of a Candy, Ohio nurse home visitor. That position will be 0.8, so about 32 hours. And this came to fruition just from discussion with my nurse supervisor and the need. We've had to return some referrals because of the capacity of our nurses haven't been able to serve the number of referrals we're receiving. So we are having a need to reach more moms. We always feel like there's more moms out there that we're not getting referred to, but that's where we're at right now for Candy, Ohio. And that will actually, we're gonna post it internally tomorrow. And then after that, it'll be an open vacancy beyond that. So we are looking at adding due to the need to serve more moms in Candy, Ohio. And then I'm gonna turn it over to Lacey to talk a little more about Candy, Ohio.
Hi, yes. So just a little kind of history and background, and you can see kind of where we've been maybe and where we're at currently, and then Nikki said the need for expanding. So Kennewick County joined in 2012, just for the reference there, and so we started with 1 nurse, and then we grew to 2 nurses over that time to serve even more families. And so in our program here in your county, we have served 302 clients over the last 12 years. We currently have 53 clients enrolled in the program, and then that kind of fluctuates in the 50 range, and it's been a little bit higher at times too. But we'd like to expand that. And we've had 113 graduate from Kennewick County, and that is huge. Your county has served the most, has the most graduated just based on population. So I think that's a real strength and a highlight, and shows the work of the families and the nurses together in that partnership. So I just want you to know that's a huge number during our time here. And then for 2023, we kind of keep a log and keep track of kind of, again, to compare where we've been. We had 50 total referrals in 2023. 39 came from Public Health and WIC, and that's our primary referral partner in this area. As you can see, majority of the referrals funnel through Public Health here in the WIC system. We also got 3 referrals from a provider, that's a healthcare provider, 1 from Parent Life, which is a community resource in the area, and 6 from NFP clients. So that's current clients that are referring their family and friends. And I say that's always kind of like the biggest compliment when we can have those current clients saying like, yes, you should do this. This has been so helpful. So that's grown over the years too, that NFP referral. And then we had 1 self-referral. So somewhere along the line, they got their information and referred themselves.
Yeah, and then the only thing I wanted to add, so Candy, Ohio is our largest county of the 21 counties. So basically, you know, we have a finance committee, a personnel committee, and executive committee made up of on our Supporting Hands group. And one of the things we look at to do like county contributions is we do use census data. So we use census data and total number of births per county. And then I have a table that kind of calculates the total percentage. And Candy, Ohio is about 14% of the total contribution. And we've been able to decrease that total contribution over time due to we get third-party reimbursement for the visits from our nurses. And then we also have some grant funding that helps support our program. So.
Well, thank you very much. Are you available for questions?
Yep. Yes.
Okay, I saw Commissioner Gardner raise your pen here a minute ago, so if you have a question, go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you. Graduation, when you talk about the criteria for that is you just complete the whole program then. So is there problems at all keeping people in the program once you get going? Or?
Yes, and so yeah, realistically, not all moms that enroll will complete 2.5 years. I mean, for once, that's a long time period. I think to commit to that. Our program is voluntary, so once they sign up, they don't have to stay in. Life changes, so things might change for them. Our highest percentage of moms probably discontinuing is moving away, moving out of the service area. they move to another area that we don't serve. Because if they move to like Alexandria in Douglas County, we could have a nurse see that client continue in Douglas County if they want to continue. It's maybe they're moving down to the Twin Cities area, or we have ones that even move from state to state, and that's where they'll fall off. And then of course some, yeah, just it's not a fit anymore after a certain period of time, so they will discontinue. But yeah, overall the strength of the ones that do complete is huge. That's a huge time commitment, an investment that the family's making, and you know that nurse over 2.5 years.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yeah, so thank you for coming here. I just have a question. Are all first-time mothers eligible, or is there like a threshold that they have to be under or something?
Yes, there is criteria.
There is, okay.
Do you want me to speak on that, Nikki?
Oh,
or-
sure, go ahead.
The criteria is
You
first is,
want to go,
a little closer, sorry.
thank you.
The criteria is, yeah, first-time mom, of course, so before that 28th week. Then there is an income criteria too. And so we follow like WIC and medical assistance guidelines. So if they're meeting the income for that, then they would qualify for our program too. If they're needed like food assistance, energy assistance, that would qualify them as
Okay,
well.
so if they qualify for WIC, then they would.
Yes, yep, then they're automatically qualifying too. And we don't have like a hard, like, have them prove that some kind of income, but if, yeah, they're already connected to WIC, or those kind of things, and medical assistance, like you said, we'll just go off of that, because we know then there's that need.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You guys, thank you for being here today. Really appreciate it. I had the distinct pleasure of being on the interview committee for when we were selecting the new executive director, and we absolutely hit a home run. Thank you so much for believing in yourself enough to do the job, and thank you for all the passion that you both put into this. Going back to referrals, and I think we've talked about this a little bit at board. We don't see a lot from providers, and something came up here that makes me wonder, because it is, basically for folks who qualify for other different programs like WIC. Is this more a matter of serving a population who maybe doesn't have a primary care physician, maybe doesn't have health insurance, doesn't have that familiarity with the healthcare or access to the healthcare system? Do you suppose that's one of the reasons why we're not seeing much of the referrals from providers?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could definitely be a piece. We have found that, when we get a provider and they're knowledgeable of our program and they kind of see the connection, I think we'll get a lot of referrals. But sometimes getting to the providers is a little bit of a challenge. We have our nurses try to do outreach in the clinics, and we know that their plates are super full for the clients that they're seeing. But I think once we get a provider that's knowledgeable and they know the program, we'll see quite a few referrals, but it might be making that connection. But then, of course, your point too, it might be where the clients are seeking services, and where they're seeking services, the understanding of our program and connecting them to our program. So, and I don't know if you have more.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to that too. And I think it kind of goes up and down too. So now just this year, I think I've already gotten 4 or 5 from providers. So it just depends on the year a little bit, I think. And then the outreach that Nikki mentioned, our nurses are, at least once a year we try to touch different points. And so the 2 nurses here just did a bunch of outreach in the last 2 months, actually, to community partners, but healthcare providers as well. So hopefully that would even increase. And we recently had a new partner, the Community Health Services Clinic in town, has now made a couple referrals this year too as well, besides just like the main providers. So I think that's a good sign too. And I am amazed, like we've been around since 2012. I started when it started in 2008. And it's just continually that awareness and sharing. So like staff turnover and new people come and go. And so we're continually trying to get the word out and sharing about what we do and the work we do. And that awareness is huge. So why we keep going back and doing outreach to try to keep that familiar with everybody.
Okay. Thank you for that. And I just wanted to reiterate, I also sit on the Finance Committee for Supporting Hands. And the Joint Powers Board has been very intentional about pulling back
on their ask of the counties for levy dollars because of those factors that you indicated previously. Some grant funding, some higher reimbursements than we used to have for the services. And so over the past several years, the impact on our current levy ask each and every year has been considerably less. I believe last year it was around $13,000 or so less than the previous year, and a similar reduction the year before that. And finally, this program is one of the unsung heroes, really, in public health, and the impact that you have on mothers and young families, and especially the children. This is one of the best use of levy and public dollars that I can imagine. So thank you for the work that you do.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to comment on one of your slides talking about 5 times the dollars returned invested. And I think that's so important. I mean, PAC4 for Families, for example, has been having a brain conference every year. Yeah, I don't think the average person or even our society recognizes the importance of early brain development. You know, we put all our education into, college degrees, high school degrees, all important. But you can't do that if you don't spot that early on and help families. And I'm thinking almost every family need some help like that. Even myself, we had our first daughter, like, what do we do now? Type of thing. I'm exaggerating slightly, but it was really nice that we had a family member who was a doctor, and like, what do we, is this okay? Is this normal? And what should we, should we be paying attention to this? So what you're doing is just fantastic, and I think it's money well invested. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I was just going to add to that comment because sometimes that question too is like, why the first-time moms and why, a certain income factor. And that's what the model and the research was based on because of that impact. There's a greater impact helping families. Not that every family can't use support, just as you mentioned, but there's a bigger impact on that. So that return investment, and that's why we focus on that target population for that too. And I was just say, and then the families impacted, I get the pleasure of watching the nurses do the work. I still have clients that I get to do the work, and over 16 years in the families that I've seen, and I still see them like 12, 13 years later after I've graduated them in town, and they'll come up and talk to me or share what they've accomplished. And it just, it just warms your heart. And I get to do joint visits with the nurses, and I get to see them do the work to help build in their professional career. But I just did a visit last week with a client that was going to graduate, and the nurse, and we celebrated the child's 2nd birthday, and then the nurse will wrap up with this family. But we went and celebrated that because that family, that they weren't going to celebrate the birthday, they had no one else to celebrate. And just one example of how the nurse is that person for them. Over 2.5 years has built that relationship. So they made that day special for that family to celebrate, or they wouldn't have had that without that connection.
Well, thank you, Ms. Prosh and Ms. Severson. Ms. Severson, for your presentation today, and look forward to another one in the future.
We got one here.
Yep. Just real quick, if someone is watching here today or they read about this in the media and they know somebody who could use these services, what is their best point of first contact?
So our website probably has the most, quick access information, and that's www.shnfp.org. On there, we have a self-referral form, so they can fill it out and do a self-referral, or same for referring somebody they know. And we also have a phone number listed on that website where they can call if they'd rather, call in to referral. But that's probably the quickest access.
Or if they're already visiting with public health and.
Oh, yes, yep. Or if they're already visiting with public health, most of the 21 counties very familiar with our programs, so they should be able to connect them. So, yes.
Outstanding. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Up next, we have a Adult Mental Health Initiative funding request.
She's my IT person today.
Other duties as a son.
Good morning. I am Corinne Torkelson, and I'm one of the social service supervisors with Candiac County Health and Human Services. And today, what I'm here to do is to make a funding request, and just want to give a little bit of a background as to what the consortium is and what is the work that they do. We are, the consortium, back in the 1900s, when the regional treatment centers closed, consortiums were and initiatives were developed throughout the state, and the intent of the work that the initiatives and the consortium does is to really look at what are the needs of mental health needs of clients in the community, and how do we support and build those community supports, those services, acute care, those sort of things. And as a mental health authority, each county is required to provide certain services, and some of those services are the services that the consortium supports and works towards providing those services for the counties. Our Southwest Mental Health Consortium is made up of 18 counties. We're called the Southwest 18. And there are 19 initiatives across the state. And so if we look at in your first handout or here on the slide, it really looks at what are those core services that we are providing as a consortium. And these core services then are provided across those 18 counties. And majority of the work that we do is bringing our partners together to be able to provide the funding to those providers. So our community mental health centers across the 18 counties. So if you look at those core services, there's a wide variety of them. I won't go into great detail about all of them, but they are also services that statutorily we're required to be able to provide for our consumers. What happens is the consortium, the funding that we have available to the consortium is a 2-year grant fund that comes from the state. And that 2-year fund is based on providing services to the underinsured or uninsured. So when providers are providing services that were listed on that first slide, is that if they have a client that is underinsured or uninsured, that is they're providing services for within the Southwest 18, then they are able to provide an invoice to the consortium for reimbursement in providing those services. And in providing that invoice to the consortium, then that's a bill that's not coming directly to the counties. We utilizing the grant as the 18 counties collectively to be able to provide those services across the 18 counties. What happens and why I'm here today is that the grant cycle, it's a 2-year grant cycle. And it is a challenge that as we walk through these slides, you see that Department of Human Services obviously is the provider of the grant. They are the ones who are providing the grant to the different initiatives. And the process that happens as we walk through the issue that we're here to talk about is that how the state provides the funding to us through the grant is through a reimbursement process. And so in the beginning, so you have a 2-year grant, they provide an advancement in that first quarter of the 2 years, but that's the only advancement that we get throughout those 2 years. And every bit of the grant needs to be spent at the end of those 2 years. That you can do a carryover from the first year to the second year, but all of it has to be spent by the end of that second year. What happens due to the clientele, due to the work that we do, the consortium is what we consider a payer of last resort. So our providers need to bill out any other possibility before they would be looking for the consortium to provide for the funding for that. Well, what happens with that is frequently there's delays in that. And so they may provide that service today, and by the time that's billed out and getting denials from other resources, that may be months down the line. And so it's really difficult to have a set amount on a monthly basis that we're able to know, okay, this is what our bills are going to be this month. And we also have, it's a reimbursement standpoint, so the service obviously has to be provided before they're going to get any, before the state is going to provide us with that, which again creates a delay because we have to be able to get those invoices, and then we have to be able to provide those invoices to the state for requesting that reimbursement, which then could put you on 45 to, if we're lucky, 45 to 60-day delay before we're getting any of that reimbursement from the state. And what's happened in that is because we are based on our grant. That is our funding. We're not making money off of any services that we're providing. And so we have to use that grant to provide our services. And also, it is based on the uninsured or underinsured, and we don't know on a regular basis what that means. One month you may have 10 clients that are going to fit that need. Then next month it might be 5, and the month after that it might be 20. And so our funding is really like this. And what's happening is that's really creating a cash flow issue for us. And because it's this, you can't count on anything. But yet we have contracts and we have responsibilities to pay our bills and able to pay our providers. So then our providers obviously are able to meet the needs of the clients that are being referred to them or that they're having interactions with. So our requests that we're working on and trying to sort through in the consortium is to be able to look to the counties to be able to provide some funding, to be able to give us that restrictive reserve account so that when the situation is such that the reimbursement is not coming from the county, or excuse me, not coming from the state, on a timely fashion, then we're able to dip into those reserves and then, of course, refund those reserves when reimbursement comes. This isn't a new problem. We've been struggling with this for a couple years, and we have been able to utilize, Prime West has been able to give us some funding to help get us through 2 years. They cannot continue to do that. We have been putting some pressure on DHS, and we have had a variety of meetings with DHS through the last few years. We are getting more pressure on, I would say, from the representatives across the Southwest 18, to the point that there has been legislatively this year one single line in the legislative that says DHS will make a plan as to how they can make some adjustments in that. No definition of what that means, no definition of will that be next week or will that be 4 years from now, that sort of thing. And we're in a situation that we can't wait for DHS to be able to resolve this. We've been trying to wait for them and we haven't been able to be successful in that. So we're just really feeling the need for each county to make a request to each county to be able to provide on that basis for our reserve funds. I'm talking and not using my
Chair,
slides.
could I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So just so I can wrap my brain around it, you're basically asking the county for to help for if it was a business, it would be like an operating loan, and then it just kind of comes in, and then just to cover the timeline between when you pay out a bill to when you get reimbursed by the state, right, for the grant.
It would be to be able
is
to
that
put
kinda
the
how it-
funds from each county into that restrictive account, reserve account. So, and then that would sit there.
Yeah.
It's not that the county has to be putting in all the time.
Yeah, it's just
not that
kind of a
we're gonna
one-time-
get back and forth.
One-time thing so that you can kind of a cushion or whatever.
Correct.
to
Yeah,
operate. Okay.
yep.
Commissioner
Yeah.
Anderson,
And
in farming, we call them operating loans.
Yeah.
In my business, they're lines of credit. And the only difference is here, I don't think we're going to get paid any interest on the money.
No, but I just wanted to, so I could understand.
But it's not,
Yeah.
it's
I
not
kinda
unique
get
to
it.
you either. I think Public Works goes through this at times. I think even our watersheds, we've had to.
Central Minnesota Jobs and Training
Yep.
kind of has that
So,
issue too.
One of the good news that, so we've been processing and talking this through, and last year the thought was if each county threw in $20,000, we would be good. just every county doing 20,000. Well, that didn't go over as well as others, as some of us might have expected, because counties wanted to be able to have some basis of why, why should Candioi County pay 20,000 and Big Stone pay 20,000, using that as an example. So we went back to the table and being able to really look at how could we put together a proposal that hopefully will be effective and okay for all the counties. In the process of doing this, we got really good news, and our good news is that our grant is more than doubling. So our current grant will be ending here at the end of '24, and then our grant for '25-26 is doubling. And so we are going from a grant of $4,458,000 to a grant of $9,935,000, or excuse me, $9,935,000 in odd cents. And so that's really good news. Because we're going to hopefully be able, not hopefully, we will be able to provide more services and meet some more needs on that our current grant has been stagnated at that amount for forever and ever. And so for us to get an increase is really exciting, because it's going to allow us, I think, to try some new and different things and be able to meet some needs that we haven't been able to. But obviously, when you double your amount of the grant by 122%, that also is going to increase the need of how much you need in that reserve fund to be able to continue to pay our bills on a timely fashion. So as you were handed out in your packets, what we're looking at is across the 18 counties. Our fiscal people believe that 540,000, if we can get 540,000 into that reserve fund, that is going to get us through those 2-year cycles and be able to pay our bills as we need to, and not have to just count on the reserve or the reimbursement coming from DHS.
Corinne, if I may, so the 540 that you arrived at, and by the way, I think the formula makes sense, but the 540, was that before or after you learned of the 122% increase?
This is based on the increase. So this is based on the 9 million.
All right.
Yes, yeah. Because initially we were looking at, it was 340 we thought that we could do. We were able to make an adjustment unnecessary to double that, because we're going to look at how we're writing our contracts with our providers as well. How can we not do the same thing that DHS is doing to us, and how can we get some of those funds out the door earlier as well? So then what we're turning in as reimbursement is going to try to regulate that as much as we possibly can. And that's why we were able to come to the 540.
Commissioner Berg, did you have a question or comment?
Yes, both. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to comment, I feel more comfortable with you saying, Big Stone County actually made the motion some time ago to do
They
the
were a bad
20,000. And everybody goes, really? And their thing was going, we're in this together, and we all want to serve these clients. And it actually passed at the end of the meeting. So part of the problem is when you get 18 counties, you don't always have the same number of attendants or people representing that county on the board. So there is a commissioner's board and an operational board, except at the annual meeting, then the delegate then probably all the commissioners weren't there, but it was approved. But after the fact, some of the counties say, well, this isn't fair. So this is where we're at. So we came back, and hopefully we don't have to come back again. There's no guarantee. And the other I might want to just follow up with a question that have you, because we don't know if every county is willing to do this at this point. So have you heard any more if there's anybody at this point that's been to the board and refused to?
Yeah, Kimberly Holm is our director. She has gotten emails from those who have gone to their boards already, and there's only been about 6 thus far. I think a lot are going today to their boards. And out of them, 6 are all in favor of this. And of course, some of that caveat of, well, if everybody else does, obviously. And also we also are working on our joint powers agreement. And so there was one who was wanting to have that resolved before a final vote but they were in favor of the funding. And so of that, those are the 6 that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
out of the 18 at this
Just
point.
Really
But-
quickly.
Yes.
And we're coming back then with the new joint powers agreement, hopefully in the future too.
Yes, we definitely will be doing that.
And I'm just going to point out something here from the very beginning of what you handed out to us is that it seems like a lot of money, 9 point some million dollars, and there's a tremendous, as everybody in law enforcement and communities around the state will understand, there's a lot of need for mental health treatment. We've been hollering for it for several years at the legislature, but it resulted of the closing of the institutions back in the 90s is why this money is coming from the state. If people are wondering, where do we have all this money and why do we have all this money for this? It's to replace previously served folks.
Right. If you,
Okay.
You can reply to that, and
Yeah.
then Commissioner Anderson is up next.
I was
You
just
have
going
a-
to say, if you just, as an example, if you look at one client who goes to an IRT, which is a intensive residential treatment, and typically that stay can be up to 90 days. If you look at on one client, that typical 90-day can be anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000. And if that client is underinsured or uninsured, the consortium is going to be funding that versus the county needing to fund that individually. And so that collectiveness and that ability to work across that 18 and have that level of a grant is really important, because it is that collaboration. So it may benefit Candioi County this month, and it may benefit Meeker County next month. And so it's utilizing that collectiveness to be able to benefit across that.
Commissioner DeWitt.
So my question is on that last page of the handout that you had for us, has a bunch of numbers, and it has current year base of 15,000, current population allocation, and it gives different numbers, and then there's current year total.
Yes.
Can you explain those numbers a little bit so I can understand
Yes.
what they mean or what they're?
Right, and so what the committee put together is to really look at a base. So instead of just saying all 18 should throw in $20,000, the challenge was really, that was brought back to the committee, was to really look at a base, so that there's a base that all counties need to put in, which is at 15,000.
Okay.
And then the rest of that, to get to that 540,000, was then based on population of the 18. So that's the percentage of your population. It makes up the difference after the base, then makes up on the next part of that. So putting those two pieces of the formula together, then to create your final amount.
Okay, all right.
And it looks like it's not linear by population as I look at whatever formula you arrived at, but as long as everybody agrees with it, should all be good to go. Commissioner
Yeah, it's more of a hybrid formula, and it's a good way of looking at it, and I think most people will, hopefully they'll all be okay with that. I just want to point out, one of the commissioners at the last board meeting mentioned that really the last presentation we had this morning was the dollar is 5 to 1 or something that you come out. This is 18 to 1 when it comes right down to it. So this investment, even though it looks like a large amount, when you talk about over $9 million, that it is not as large, and it's really good for our district, our regions that these 18 counties cover. And this includes the mental health centers, and a big chunk of these dollars will be going to the mental health centers for services and contracted out too. So it's really a good thing, and to look at it from a collaborative point of view. Now, again, one of the biggest counties, but they're all our, if we look at it from the point of view of a regional thing, these are our people that we want to provide good mental health services in this part of this state and in the rural area. And we do have a larger population here because we have a lot of the resources right here. So we may come out way ahead on this in some ways we won't, but we have to serve our clients wherever they are as best to serve them in their home area. So it's a very good program. And I also want to point out too that even our director of the program is paid through these grants. So she doesn't get paid neither. I mean, this is not a good system we have right now, and hopefully DHS is going to change that. And there've been, I might want to comment on that too. Legislative, there's been some efforts to that, and there's been conversation with Representative Baker about this. I also talked to Commissioner Harpstead about this as well, and she wasn't even aware of it, and I think I maybe shared that before. but they are looking at different grant systems, so hopefully we can get this problem solved and not come back for more money as we get an increase in grants again, so.
And I think that, like I mentioned before, I think we've had meetings on a variety of, with fiscal, with program, over the last couple of years. And so the pressure is coming up, and now I would say the pressure is also coming down from that legislative standpoint as well. And I think that is hopefully going to create some change. DHS is saying they're hopeful of that. But again, we kind of need our plan B if they are not able to meet that reimbursement the way we need to be able to be paying our bills.
So this is an action item. I would entertain a motion to, at the request of staff.
Just so you know that, so the total as laid out in the handout is a 57,188. And again, that would be a looking at that one-time investment in that.
Mr. Chair, I so move to approve that.
Commissioner Berg moves on the request for a $57,188 loan to the, essentially, a loan to the, as a restricted reserve. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Gardner seconds. Any more discussion? Mr. Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if there becomes a point in time in the future where this reserve fund is no longer needed, of course, then these funds just return back to the counties from which they came.
Correct. Or if the consortium were to disperse, for example, then those funds would come back. If a county were to decide to withdraw from the consortium, those funds would come back.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you guys very much.
Thank
Sure,
you.
may I just make a comment too?
Oh, yep.
I don't think you mentioned, but Corinne Torkelson is currently the chair of the consortium, of the operational board, and she's been involved with that for many years. So what she says, I think I take very, very important, your opinions on this, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma.
Thanks.
All right, up next, a request for proposals on a space study. Mr. Thorson.
Good
Then
morning,
we'll
Mr.
take a
Chairman.
5-minute break when this is, item is dealt with. Sorry, Eric.
Yep. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'm here on behalf of the county's facility committee after we've had discussions on space use and needs in county buildings. I'm requesting a study on the courthouse, county office building, and the Health and Human Services facility. I know this is the first time that everyone probably has seen the document. I did err in eye compass, I'll admit that there is not a financial impact to this request for authorization. We're basically just asking them, the contractors, what they would charge us to do the work that we requested in the proposal. Once these proposals are back, there is no obligation to accept any of the proposals. We can just not do anything with them. We've already done a survey in this building, which we received great feedback from public and staff. We've started this process somewhat, but we want to continue this process so that moving forward, we have a plan for each department, especially in the facilities term of things. A lot of questions can be answered by a space study. Do we need additional office space? Are there areas in the buildings that are underutilized, and how can you shift more utilization to underutilized areas or to another building? How many employees are in the building on each day of the week? What area of the buildings aren't utilized to their full potential? How much underutilized space is there in the building? How can you best optimize how space in the building is used? Should departments move to smaller, larger office space in order to be more effective and efficient? Health and Human Services busting at the seams. Courthouse, county office building, lots and lots of underutilized space. And so I think we just need guidance on how to utilize this space to make better use of the facilities that the county does have. I plan on sending 4 firms requests for proposals. Wolf Architects of St. Paul, Klein McCarthy of St. Louis Park, BKV Group of Minneapolis, and Engen Associates of Wilmer here. All have been highly recommended for doing this type of work. So I would actually email out the proposals today. Then they have a week to ask questions, and then we have a few days to answer those questions, and the proposal to be due by June 28th. We can review them in length, there's no hurry. All these proposals are good for 90 days, and like I said, we don't have to accept or move any on any of them. Yeah, that's basically all I have for you, gentlemen.
So, there's no cost because to ask for a proposal is no cost.
Right,
As
yep.
you correctly stated, if we accept one, then of course there would be a
Yes.
cost. So I'd open the floor up for any questions or comments from the board.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Which buildings are you talking about?
The courthouse, the county office building, and the Health Human Services.
Any consideration, the rescue squad and all the other buildings we may have at all, or? And also, I think I talked to Administrator Baker about too, maybe Prairie Lakes Youth Program. Again, that's a joint powers, it's totally different, but that's something we may have to address too. You're looking down the road when we look at money.
I believe the Joint Powers Board for Prairie Lakes has already started that process of going out for RFPs for space studies specific to their facility.
I can speak to that, if that's okay. I actually spoke with the executive director, Holly Booth, this morning, and I learned at your last board meeting that you talked about hiring a consultant, possibly for future building projects, where, when, all of that. They quite haven't started that process yet. And I told her that I would like the Joint Powers Board to lead that, and then we're more than happy, because we own that facility, to work with that consultant, whoever the Joint Powers hires, to loop into this project or any future projects so that we can work with them on it. Any current maintenance needs, I will address with Andy, but I would like the Joint Powers Board to kind of give us that letter of intent, like, hey, let's move forward on this. And so she was very understanding with that. She said she was directed from their Joint Powers Board to start looking at consultants. And so she'll start doing that. And then after your June board meeting, then her and I and Andy will probably regroup on that as well.
Mr. Chair, thank you for that information. I guess what I was wondering is, would it be better though, instead of the cost-wise, if we did it all together and they could even chip in on it?
You know, I think that could be a possibility. I think right now, I don't know if
'Cause you're-
Prairie Lakes is there quite yet. And I think Prairie Lakes is so cumbersome that I would like that to be the main focus because of the DOC requirements. It's almost like a jail project, more or less. You could maybe say this is a smaller scale project because of, yes, we'll still have safety and security and space and all of that. But Prairie Lakes Youth, there's secure, unsecure, all the DOC requirements, holding places, rooms, classrooms. It's a little bit
Complicated.
more complicated. And so at this point, I would rather not see them mesh, but I understand the need for that building as well. And I did communicate that with Holly. I just think, let's have that Joint Powers Board get the consultant, and then we can see how we can connect the two projects.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the information. I think we have to be really in tune that even though it's the joint powers, it's very much Kansas County. So when we come to bonding and so forth, with smaller county that maybe has 1 or 2 clients in it a year as a joint powers, they're not going to be that excited. So it's really our baby in many ways that we use it mostly. And we're lucky that we have them helping us make this work. And I think as a regional or collaboration is a good way to go with the joint powers, but I think the heavy load is going to fall on Kansas County. So that's why I'm bringing them up.
I,
Thank you.
thank you for that, and I.
But it can wait, I mean, it's,
I would agree that's the truth of the matter is that there's gonna be a lot of weight on. And I'm wondering, would it make any sense if, for example, Prairie Lakes was ready to move in 60 days, that we then do something together? But if you go to them and say, hey, if 60 days is unrealistic, it's gonna be 6 months, then we go ahead and move forward, because I think it would be a lot more efficient to look at the whole system at one time, should they be able to be ready for that in, say, 60 days. You're shaking your head, yes,
Yep,
and I guess,
I-
I'm asking your question somewhat rhetorically, but.
Yeah.
you know,
probably more of the board than,
Yeah,
in your question.
If I can answer, I would say it's more of the Joint Powers Board, if they would be ready to start that process.
And if they're not, we move forward.
and their RFP might be a lot different than
Right.
ours. Ours is basically office space.
Yeah, we're talking-
Theirs is gonna be much more in tune for what space they have.
Yeah, we're talking probably some serious bonding there.
Right, and there's some other opportunities at the state bonding, maybe federal bonding, that we can continue exploring. That I've also communicated with Holly this morning on that. I see where you're coming from, that it could possibly be a cost savings, but I don't know if the Joint Powers Board is there. Now, Andy was saying these proposals are good for 90 days. We'll get them at the June 28th. You'll by then have your Joint Powers Board meeting. We'll probably know more at a July board meeting to update everyone on. If this were to be approved today, to go out for an RFP for our county building, the county government buildings, I should say.
Sure,
Mr. Chair.
go ahead.
Yeah, and also, I don't think our board is there neither.
Right.
You know, that we are willing to move forward and look at bonding and what that's going to involve in. Because what they do, we're going to have to be on board as well, and we're going to be the big piece of this whole thing. So as a board, we're going to have to make a commitment as we move forward with any movement on Prairie Lakes Youth Program as far as remodeling and or building new, and that's going to be millions.
Yeah, and even in a bonding process. I have a question on, you talked about the proposed, the 4 firms that you're gonna send the RFP to. So we had an individual from Engen and Associates that had been working with us and doing some work. Would everybody start with a clean slate, or is that work that's going to be put in this?
No, it's basically a clean slate. They have a lot of information already, but that's not gonna change their proposal.
Well, and even the ideas that the previous architect had brought forward to the building committee, which gives Engen and Associates quite an advantage if that information lies in-house, as they, because we're gonna be looking at people that have probably a lot of different sort of views as, you know, what is the best intention here?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to follow up on that. That is a really good
Go ahead.
point. I would assume that we move forward with remodeling with the intent of, you know, how to use this space. So, I mean, we are going down this road already. Now we're stepping back in a sense and, hey, let's get an outside view and make sure we're accurate. Am I correct on this?
Yeah, I think so. Andy and I have kind of been talking about this. These firms specialize, not that Engen doesn't, but these firms also specialize in the grand scheme of county government buildings. The rep that we were using with Engen and Associates happened to leave that employer, and so Andy and I just thought, let's bring this up to the facilities committee, see if we want to pivot. We're still going to include them in the RFP. I still think, though, the information and the work that we have done with Engen isn't wasted by any means. They'll be able to use that information moving forward. And those concepts, the surveys are done regarding this building, so they already have that information to work off. And so I think we're in a good position if we wanted to pivot.
Yeah, in RFPs, you know, everybody, all these firms have their own format that they're gonna present. And you don't specifically have to take the low price one. If you like how this format is and how they're gonna present all the information, how they're gonna collect it. You like that better, well, then we go down that road.
Sure. And I guess I bring it up because, one, are we presenting a preconceived notion of what we think we want because
No.
of some work that has already been done? And two, will all the firms be given the same information
Yes.
of any previous work in consideration for their RFPs?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I so move that we approve this request for RSP for facility studies.
Commissioner Berg moves on the request for sending out an RFP on a facility space study. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds. Any further discussion? Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In my professional world, I'm looking at a RFP right now, which happens to have a clause that says that the entity that is choosing a potential partner in this has the opportunity to negotiate further with that firm. Do we have anything like that in this RFP? Because what I think I'm hearing you say is that if there is some time that may be needed, we have that 90 days that these bids are good. That's essentially an extra 90-day window to maybe, if that joint powers board is far enough down the road, to be able to say to that firm or to all of those firms, say we have a slightly different scope here. I think and I don't see anything like that in here, and that's what I was asking Shane if he had seen this, but I didn't get a chance to bring this particular piece up to him. I just wonder if we could tweak that just a bit to give us a little bit of flexibility in addressing that concern that Commissioner Berg has expressed.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around what you're suggesting, Commissioner Gardner. So 90 days, so we've got 90 days, but they won't wait 90 days to respond to the RFP. So the work.
No, they have to respond by the end
Right.
of June.
So even if,
But the bids are good for 90 days,
Yes.
is what I'm hearing.
but even the space study and all of that might change completely
Yep.
should the other entity get.
It might, but you kind of essentially have then a de facto extra 90-day window upon which to be able to react if their joint powers board is sufficiently down that road, or you may already find within that period that, yeah, it's just their project is too complex, let's just move forward with this.
Separately. Got it.
Is that making sense?
I think I'm understanding what you're saying. I don't know how we deal with it, but,
It's just language.
yeah. Commissioner Dale
Correct.
Anderson.
I just think the space study will do a good thing for our employees too. I mean, I think that it's going to say where we have excess space, unused space, and where it's way too crowded. And I think that's what I think is going to be important about this space study, so that we can see where we need to change and move things around or do something different. So I think it's going to be very helpful for our employees too, to have this chance to have, to make sure we're treating our employees right at the same time.
So one of the things I saw in there was some suggestion about the space that we currently lease to other entities, say Pack for Families, Extension, HRA and stuff. Is that also a part of a recommendation that they would give us?
Yes.
Whether or not we should or should.
They're gonna go over every foot of the 3 set facilities, whether it's our employees in there or it's lease space.
Yeah. And then I'm sure consideration for the revenue that is generated from those lease spaces.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair. Yeah, when we lease out to people, you mentioned Pack for Family too, we have to see what their needs are as well. We worked hard over many years to keep them here in Candiac County. It's to our advantage that they do rent from in Candiac County, and then it's a good fit as much as possible because of our connection with Health and Human Services to be close to them too.
Yeah.
And that's how we got them to come here. Otherwise, they could actually, you know, it's a 7-county thing, they could end up being housed in another county too. So
Yeah, we might find.
We need their input too.
Yeah, they might have it where, you know, they come in and interview everybody and find a tenant that, you know, they've changed over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
They don't need quite more space as much as they have, but this other tenant has grown and they need more space.
And- Mr.
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Yeah, and actually, I think they need more space again now, because TAC 4 works out grants, and they're thank you, very successful in getting grants. So, but it's like this, you know, you get some grants, you get it for so many periods, and then they get other grants, and they have to, you know, lay off people and so forth, so.
Like I said, this is a building that is busting at the seams.
Yeah, so it's a challenge.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And we will take a 5-minute recess. Sorry, Eric. I'll reconvene the Kaneohe County Board of Commissioners meeting. Next up on the agenda is Eric Van Dyken, zoning administrator. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Eric Van Dyken, County Zoning Administrator, here today. The first item I have for you is a request to adopt Resolution 2024-17. This resolution would have the effect of stating the intent to adopt and implement the Chippewa River Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan once the plan is approved by the Board of Water and Soil Resources. It has been submitted to them for their approval, and this is part of our continuous turnover of our county from classic geographic boundary water planning to water planning by watershed district. So this would be now the third of our four, and in a minute I'll talk to you about the fourth of our four. And this one is again our kind of our northwest area, the Chippewa River watershed, and we work with quite a few partners in that area. It extends all the way up into Otter Tail County way at the top of it, and then goes down, of course, through Chippewa to the Minnesota River. So staff recommends adoption of Resolution 2024-17.
So you've heard staff's recommendation on Resolution 2024-17. How do you wish to act?
Mr. Chair, I'd move Resolution 2024-17.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves on 2024-17. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving to the next agenda item then is something related but a little bit different. We're at a little different stage there. In the Chippewa, there already had been from quite some time an organization formed to oversee the planning and then implementation of the water planning effort for the One Watershed, One Plan program. In the South Fork of the Crow River, we have now gone through that same planning process, adopted a plan, and now we're at the stage of saying, okay, how do we organize ourselves and move forward with the implementation? Each of these areas end up kind of talking through that in a little bit different ways. We have joint powers boards, we have joint powers collaborations. This particular proposal from this area is for a joint powers collaboration. This agreement was drafted in consultation with John Kolb from Rinke Noonan, who does quite a bit of specialized work in this area, and it has, I believe, been run past our county attorney previously by Mr. Kolb. And so staff does recommend that the board pass a motion, and I did offer a proposed motion in the agenda item that was as recommended by Mr. Kolb, and so I put that there for your reference as an organized way to enter into this collaboration agreement.
So you heard recommendations from staff regarding the South Fork Joint Powers Collaboration Agreement. I'd be looking for a motion based on Mr. Kolb's recommendation of the verbiage here. So feel free to, if somebody wants to make that motion, just read it.
Do you want me to read the whole thing or just
I think probably you should, yeah. You're good.
read it? Okay. Okay. I'll make the motion that the board approve and adopt the Joint Powers Collaboration Agreement for formation of the South Fork Crow River Watershed Collaborative, and that the board acknowledge the purpose of adopting the Joint Powers Collaboration Agreement, creating the South Fork Crow River Watershed Collaborative to facilitate implementation of the Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan, One Watershed, One Plan for the South Fork of the Crow River, One Watershed, One Plan, Planning Area 13 Watershed. And that consistent with its prior resolution, the board adopts and authorizes implementation of the Comprehensive Watershed Management Plan within those portions of its jurisdiction lying within Watershed Planning Area 13 and 4, that the board authorizes its chairperson to execute the joint power, or I don't know, JPCA.
Joint Powers Collaboration Agreement.
Okay. On behalf of the board, and directs its attorney to review the JPCA for form and execution. Failure of the attorney to review and sign the JPCA shall not invalidate the JPCA.
So I'm going to, thank you, Commissioner Duane. I'm going to suggest that the seconder can just say what he said. So I'd entertain a second.
I'll second it, Mr.
Commissioner
Chair.
Berg seconds. So next time, tell Mr. Coe we'll make our own, or
probably
we'll have
the-
you do it.
That's probably the largest motion we've
I
made.
think it is. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. I will say this, Mr. Kolb is very thorough. I've been on many meetings with him, and he's very thorough.
Mr. Chair, can I have a quick follow-up
Yes.
to that? There has been also requests to clarify who will be the representative on this. Commissioner Dwayne Anderson has represented the board in that watershed area. I would maybe just ask for either a motion or a confirmation that he would be representing the board on this, in this collaboration.
So you've
as
heard
well.
another recommendation from staff on who should represent us on that board, and I think that makes perfect sense. I'll make that motion that Commissioner Dwayne Anderson be our representative on that board.
Second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, next up, approve a NACO delegate for the summer conference.
Good morning, Commissioners. Candioi County Administrator Kelsey Baker. I really can't take the credit for this. The request for action today is to decide on a delegate for primary votings for the National Association of County Government Conference this summer. We have two commissioners attending, Commissioner Emdike and Commissioner Dwayne Anderson. And so we need to select who's going to be the voting delegates.
So if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a little light on that. Every year for the NACO conference, counties are asked to, typically, if we don't attend the conference, we're asked to proxy our vote to the state associations, and they do that all over. Depending on last year was really important because one of our colleagues from St. Paul or Ramsey County was or 2 years ago, I think it was, she was up for first vice president, and that was important that we have all the votes we could. Whoever gets delegated to will likely proxy it at the time of the conference to the state association. So it makes no difference to me whether it's Commissioner Anderson or myself. Whoever carries that burden has to remember to proxy.
Mr. Chair, would I be able to make a motion?
Yes, sure.
Okay, I would make a motion that Commissioner Roger Imdeck be the voting you, just because you've been to more than me and you kind of know the ins and outs a lot more than I do, so.
All right, there's a motion on the floor to appoint NACO delegate as Commissioner Imdick. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Dale Anderson seconds, and they make it pretty easy for us. They have a little station there for us to go up and just hit a couple buttons and it's over with, so. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Okay. The second request is a letter of request to the city of Wilmer, and this may have been some confusing to some in the public. So the reason why we are looking at this option is within the city, the facilities committee, we've talked about all county buildings, public works, law enforcement center, county office building, county courthouse, health and human services building. We want to look at all of the options. And the first step was asking the board to approve the request for proposals. So thank you for approving that this morning, because that's kind of the first step in the process. The second step is we want to engage conversation with the city of Wilmer. So what I'm asking for approval today is if the board chair can write a letter and send to the city of Wilmer requesting that we look at options for building projects. If there are, great. If there's not, we want to just make sure we're exploring all the options before we come back to the board to make a final recommendation. So there hasn't been a letter sent to the city yet. The county has not received a letter from the city. This is just to get the second step of this process. And so it would be asking for approval for the board chair to send a letter to the city of Wilmer to start that process.
So you have heard Administrator Baker's request. How do you wish to proceed?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the letter of request to City of Wilmer.
Commissioner Dale Anderson moves on the letter of request inviting City of Wilmer into conversations. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Gardner seconds. Any discussion? Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this makes a lot of sense. We already collaborate, of course, with the City of Wilmer over across the street here at the Law Enforcement Center. That proved obviously to be a good move for both entities. And there's no harm in talking. I know they have space needs. I know we have space needs, and let's just see if there are any commonalities that might come forward in the future, kind of similar to the earlier discussion that we had in trying to find the most efficient way to utilize our space and ultimately to deliver the services that we have.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Really get us caught, no, I can't get us caught up.
Close.
I'm gonna do real quick. The last request for me is regarding the board governance training. This was kind of talked about during the board operating guidelines and procedures policy that the commissioners will be working on. And this is also kind of a step in the process to move forward in that direction. The board chair happened to be at a conference with the Association of Minnesota Counties Executive Director, Julie Ring, and she recommended Mr. Amick. Dave Amick has many years in county government and also city government. He was the previous director of the League of Minnesota Cities before he started doing this consulting work. He works a lot with Minnesota Association of County Administrators Group as well. He's been to a couple conferences that I've been at, talking about board governance training. And so I think this would be a really good overall, if it's a training, if it's a retreat, however the board would want to frame this. But I'm asking for approval to start that process so I could work with him and set a date. I did have a follow-up question with Mr. Amick, and he said that he would, it would be no more than 25 hours. So he's gauging maybe 20, 25 hours that he would put into this. So that's less than $5,000 that this would be a cost to the county. And I think this is a really beneficial training. I've been involved in board governance training prior. I think it's always important for a board to go through this process to have a better understanding of the commissioners' roles. And so I would recommend this for approval today.
So you heard recommendation from Administrator Baker. I agree with everything she said. So I would entertain a motion on moving forward with this.
I will so move.
Commissioner Gardner moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Dwayne Anderson seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, you,
Do you want me to stay up?
yeah, I was just gonna say, that brings us to the end of our regular agenda items, and I usually call on you first for administrator updates, so you can do it from there or come back here. It makes no difference to me.
Sure, I can do it right here, quick. So the Primacy Strategy Group, this is the federal lobbyist group that the board approved for the county to start working with. Mel Odens and I have had a few initial conference calls with our reps there. They've been very interesting, informative, fun. It's a really fun group. And so it is. I'm excited to continue working with them, and I'm excited for them to come present to the county board because they're just so educational on the opportunities that Candioi County has. So I'm really excited on the topics that we've already been discussing. And so we've been looking at our grant opportunities and our funding opportunities, and we're kind of trying to figure out our top 3 priorities. I've been working with the department heads, our county partners, on creating some of those top 3 categories along with Mel. And one of the reps that we've been working with, his family has a place here in Candioi County on a lake. And he will be here the week of the 4th. And I am wondering if we can do not a work session, but that Jordan Hager could be here to kind of give an overview of the projects that we have been talking about to the board. And so I would put him up at the end of the agenda for July 2nd. I know it's kind of a holiday week, but we still need to get general business conducted. And so it won't be a long meeting, but I'm hoping that he could come. We talked about either July 18th or July 2nd. And July 18th would work, but it would be they would have to Zoom in. And this way, on the July 2nd date, he would be here in person, which I think would be beneficial for you all to meet him face to face. He would give kind of a high overview of what PSG is about, kind of the conversations that we've been having, and bring you all up to speed. And so that's kind of where, and then he'll go over some of the topics, like I said, that we've been discussing.
And is this as a report out, we don't really even, because we've already acted on this and we're engaged.
Right,
so-
yep, this is just all to let you know, sorry, maybe I'm just going into that mindset standing at this podium. This would just be letting you all know to have that on your calendars. So if there is an idea or a topic that you are like, hey, Kelsey, have you ran this by him or talked to Mel or a department head? Let us know so that we can have that information ready to go if we need to gather information or look into it prior. So,
And I would encourage us to go to the July 2nd meeting so that we could meet Jordan in person. I first met him, it was a happenstance. I was at the transportation fly-in, Mel and I both were, and we had a reception the evening we got there, and we're standing around, it's all Minnesota people, right? So we started asking, where are you from, where are you from? And Jordan asked me, we happened to be standing at the table, and I said, New London Spicers. Oh, I love Green Lake. And I said, how do you know Green Lake? He said, well, my mom and dad live on one side of it. But I think it's important that we keep this thing moving because there'll be a transportation fly-in again in September. And it doesn't have to just be transportation, that we might be able to meet with some of their staff and any initiatives we might have identified by that time.
and that's one thing really cool that we'll go over when he's here at the July 2nd meeting. We're not just looking at highway projects that we typically have looked at in the past. And I think even Mel said I got an A for our last conference call because I'm bringing forth housing options, county partner options, human services, all.
Youth options.
I was just hearing mention it.
Public safety, all of emergency management, all of those areas. And so I think we're sitting really good to kind of bring forth some ideas. Now, we're not guaranteed anything, but we are bringing forth really good ideas that on our last call, they were really grabbing at different stuff. So that felt really positive.
So, and I'll just add on to that and then I'll shut up. But, so Mel always talks about the relationships that you build when you go to St. Paul or go to Washington DC. Jordan's fiance is a former chief of staff for Senator Klobuchar. So those kind of connections never hurt. I can assure you that. And so I'm really pleased that we've engaged them and that we are going to be meeting him on July 2nd.
Good.
The other thing that I put on there, and I do have a couple other administrative reports, but the planning and zoning with townships, I'm not sure Gary Gear was maybe going to pop up for this, was that I've been working with Commissioner Dale Anderson on this, and he has been talking to me and just getting a few phone calls. Like all of you, all county employees probably receive phone calls from the public. I don't want anybody to really overthink this. There's no issues. I think our staff do a phenomenal job in this department. But sometimes the work that we do comes really natural to us because we're living it every day. And so for the public to see a conditional use permit or to see a zoning ordinance, that's new to them. They don't live in this type world. And so the questions that Dale has received, he works with me, I work with the employees, we kind of go through that process. We've kind of been working on this really since last summer. And so more or less, I wanted to pose the question to the full board. If you all receive questions on planning and zoning, I think there's always ways that we can improve our communication. I think we already do a good job on the communication, but how can we improve if we need to? And so one of the recommendations is that if we wanted to add an agenda item to a planning and zoning commission, because really this would funnel through the planning and zoning commission, have those questions answered there. Other Commissioner Amdike sits on the Planning and Zoning Commissioners, or Commission, but other commissioners would be able to attend that meeting as well. Or if none of you are receiving phone calls, maybe it's best that Commissioner Anderson works with those townships that we're hearing questions from.
Well, I don't know that we're quite prepared to do an action thing here today.
No,
because it
this
was
is
not
just
an-
more discussion or consensus if you're.
Even the discussion, I think, because we didn't have the background on it, on the agenda, so perhaps it is a discussion for a future agenda item. And, because there was no background in our packets on it. So Commissioner Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To your question, is anybody else hearing about this? And I'm getting calls, even though, my little district is entirely within the city limits of the city of Wilmer. I'm getting some calls, and I suspect because I do have some prior background on planning and zoning as well. And I think there is some concern out there in some of the townships.
I'm gonna stop that conversation right now, because we're not, we shouldn't be having this discussion as it was not an agenda item and we were not prepared with background. packet on it.
And I'm going to appeal the ruling of the chair on that, because this isn't going very far
This is
down the
report
road.
outs. We're in report out and administrative updates, so we can talk about it at another meeting.
Let's just suffice it to say that there are concerns out there that the public would like to get some more information on and perhaps make sure that their voices are heard, and they're looking for an outlet to do that. Does that sound fair enough?
From a member of the planning commission, I will defend the commission and the process.
I'm not
Not
attacking
saying
the
that,
commission.
I know you aren't, but there is a process for finding out what's going on, and staff does a pretty good job, in my opinion, of visiting with them when they bring it forward. I just.
We're hearing from
stop this
people
conversation.
saying that the process is broken and doesn't work for them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I think it's a good agenda item. I would just like to suggest that we're putting it on the agenda, that the questions or concerns that the Administrator Baker and the Chair and joining in planning, Rick Van Dyken and Gary Gear, field those questions first and see if they can solve them. And ones they think they should bring forward to the board, bring them. And I think that's what you have in mind. So,
That is what I have in mind.
and
The
so
staff
I'm
can
ready to
handle
move on.
that.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right, let's move on.
The other report out that I had is Prairie Lakes. We talked about the building quite a bit for Prairie Lakes Youth Facility. And so being the owner of that facility, I would like to schedule a tour. Commissioner Berg has recommended that. Tentatively, I have planned for June 18th. That is the Board of Equalization and Appeals, the evening at 6 p.m., but we have our regular board meeting prior to that at 4:30. And so I was just curious to see even if we got 3 of you to tour that facility at 3 o'clock. Holly Booth said it would be about an hour tour. So if you want to attend, just let me know. And if there is a quorum, I would just add it to the top of the June 18th agenda so that we would notice that meeting. Or it wouldn't be a meeting, but there would be a quorum.
Would that be before regular meet, before 4:30, then? So like 3 o'clock?
3 o'clock, yep, sorry.
And I think you suggested to me before the meeting that we probably have about a half-hour break between.
Well, it'd be from
Tour and-
3 to 4, and then
Yeah.
you'd have a half-hour break, so until 4:30 when the board meeting would start. So just reach out to me and let me know if you're able to attend, and then I can let Holly know and we can confirm that date. The other thing I just wanted to report out is I have my first budget meeting with the department head this afternoon, and so they're all scheduled some still have to get scheduled, Mel Odens. And so I'll meet with all of the department heads this month. And then in July, we'll have more of a recap. And like I said, at the April budget meeting, we'll do a work session in August. Depending on when I get the budgets and we're able to do that first print, I'm shooting for the first meeting in April, but if it's at the second meeting.
August?
August, thank you. I'm shooting for the first meeting in August to do the budget work session, but if we have to push it to the second meeting, that's because we're just finalizing some numbers to be able to bring that to the board publicly, so.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Bird.
Just to go back to your former comment about the tour of the Prairie Lakes Youth Program, I'd be sure the press is invited and they're more than welcome to be part of that tour as well, and they'll be there.
But that's all I have for report outs.
All right, thank you. Then, when we go to, now as we go to board, I'm gonna just kind of flash back to 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, when, or 4 years ago, when we decided to do these report outs as a result of going away from per diems and going to straight salaries. One of the concerns by some commissioners, a couple commissioners, was that without doing the report outs, we don't know if people are attending their meetings. And then when I became a chair 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I said, let's focus on quality rather than quantity. The purpose of the reports really is to bring us up to date on committees that we sit on in which the rest of us don't, for example, workforce. And so we'll try to focus on our committees and try to keep it at about 3 minutes. So I'll start with Dale this time, Commissioner Dale Anderson.
Why don't you start? You always leave it to the end.
Well, I can do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I will, you gotta give me a chance to get it up because I was not prepared. So on May 22nd, I attended a Zoom meeting with the Association of Minnesota Counties. They asked the chairs and administrators to take part in a Zoom meeting regarding the agenda for the District 6 meeting. And then later in the afternoon, I attended a Candioi County Lakes meeting, of which some of you also did, put on by the Soil and Water Conservation District. On 5/28, I participated in a Minnesota Department of Revenue webinar on public utilities assessment, meaning tax assessments. And as you know, some counties have been forced to pay back money that they received. And so the Department of Revenue is looking at different ways of assessing public utilities such as pipelines and gas lines and those kind of things. On 5/29, I had a joint building committee meeting with the city of Wilmer, and yesterday was the EDC broadband committee. One of the good things, and I think I reported on this last time as a legislative update, is, and it was talked about yesterday at the broadband committee, is that the dollars from the BEAD program, $65 million or something like that, that's coming into the state of Minnesota, initially had a requirement that contractors use prevailing wages for that. Well, the legislature allowed us to waive that requirement, and which was really, really good news, because most of this construction has taken place in areas where there isn't a lot of prevailing wages being paid, and so it would have raised the costs seriously. So that's all I have. So you want to go next, Dan?
Yeah, I can go. I don't have a lot. Building committee with Roger last on the 29th. Yesterday was kind of a zoo. That was really the other day of my busy meetings. Tourism, I stopped in for just a minute. I only had a few minutes there, but campgrounds are getting filled up. They're getting a lot of reservations in. There's a calendar on the Wilmer Lakes Area Conventioners and Visitors Bureau. And look at that. I mean, the 4th of July is coming before we blink here, and there's the Wilmer Fest events, and there's all that is listed on that calendar, so you can see different things that are going on in the county. So take a peek at that. There's a lot of stuff happening in the next couple weeks. And I don't want to talk all about the extension committee that we had yesterday either. Dwayne was chairing that committee yesterday, but 4-H has really taken a hold, I think, in our county with our new people that we've got hired. They've really been going out and above and beyond to do a lot of programming with the young youth in the community. They do a lot of work with child and family development. They've started a new shooting sports thing that they are working on getting kids involved in, and a lot of work with horticulture and plants and different types of things with that. So they're really stepping up, I think, and making our county a good place for learning about 4-H. Not actually so much 4-H, but more extension. There's a lot. I always say it's all about the county fair, but Trish said it well yesterday when I said that. She said there's a whole lot more than goes on than the county fair, and And boy, when you listen to what they're doing, there is a lot of stuff going on other than the county fair. So pretty exciting thing with that. I did meet yesterday afternoon with Mark Hogard from the Tipatonka Golf Course. And if the lakes are interested, there is some opportunity to do a sewer project, but they need to contact Mel or the sewer division to look at that. It doesn't have a big window because they came with a conditional use before with an option of putting in a septic system or going with the city with the sewer and water. So they're just exploring options, and I think that there's an opportunity if the Lake Andrew and maybe Games or Norway are interested in hooking into that sewer that wouldn't be there if this wouldn't be an option. So just something to look at. It was fun to meet with him, and he showed me a little bit of what the golf course was going to look like. So that was a nice thing to have an update on that. But that's all I have.
Commissioner Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Was able to go back up to my old stomping grounds on the 23rd and attended the Home Run Leadership presentation up at Sourcewell up in Staples, which is my hometown. Commissioner Berg and Administrator Baker attended along as well. Nice presentation. Nothing too terribly over the top in terms of difficulty, and some good solid advice for conducting business and so forth. Attended the legislative update from Representative Baker, Senator Lang, and retiring Representative Erdahl, who called himself in his farewell address before the legislature one of the last Eisenhower Republicans. Now, I see a couple people in here who maybe don't know who Eisenhower was, and that's okay. But let's just suffice it to say that this is a person who really worked for everybody in his constituency, and not having Representative Erdahl there, especially as his work was primarily around bonding, will be a loss for our region, certainly. And I finally attended a retirement party for Steve Ammerman, publisher of the West Central Tribune. Yeah, I believe yesterday was his absolute last day on site, and 42 years. When I came to town back in 1982, I went to work at the Tribune in the composing room, and Steve had already been there about 6 months. So obviously, I share a little bit of envy of him in being able to make this retirement decision now. And I just wish him all the best. He's been a great advocate for local community journalism across all of Minnesota. And I wish him well in his retirement. That's all I have.
Commissioner Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was a short 2 weeks with a holiday in there, but interesting enough, Commissioner Gardner and I ended up attending a lot of meetings this past 2 weeks, and I was part of that training. And it was very interesting training in the sense it was very narrow point of view of leadership and getting buy-in from people. It was very well done. It was a good chance to be together with Administrator Baker and Commissioner Gardner as well. In legislative update, I also attended that. It was very good information meeting. We wish we would have had more information. And there was really some concerns, what got passed and probably didn't get passed, and some serious discussion of the financial impact even on Kansas County. As Representative Baker said that there's going to be a $300,000 impact that we didn't maybe anticipate. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but I assume it is. And I went to West Central Tribune for the retirement of Mr. Emmerman, and he's certainly going to be lost. He's certainly been around here for a long time, and I think that we still got some good leadership there going, and Kelly's going to do a great job as well. And I would like to shout Erdahl too, Representative Erdahl, he will be missed, and I want to thank him as much. I attended Family Resource Center, and Commissioner Gardner was part of that, as well as Administrator Baker, and we talked about, it was a follow-up from our tour to the Family Resource Center's concept that we were looking at, and the people that attended that. And the result was really basically, we thought it was valuable to continue to explore that, and got another meeting set up and looking at other partners coming in. There was a lot of discussion, how do we focus on this? Because everyone's going to be somewhat different. Is it, the one we saw in Scott County is really focusing on child protection. Do we look at adults? Do we, what kind of children focus do we take? And what kind of outcomes? And so there's a lot of more conversation to take place, but it's kind of exciting to see that. And we talked about having pop-up ones to start out with, and start out small and see how it looks like, but no official decisions were made. In Spicer Legion, the Soil and Water, and Kansas County, there was a meeting there concerning our lakes. And all the people who lived on lakes got invite there, and it was speakers, and we had DNR was involved, and some people from the state talking about the lakes and the quality of lakes and the importance of our lakes and the wellness, and they even talked about lawns and zoning. And it was a very, very good meeting, and hopefully we could have some more like that. A lot of public, the people who live in the lakes were very concerned, and I think everybody left there learning something. So that was very good. So I think that pretty well sums up everything. Thank you.
Commissioner Duane?
Okay. Yeah, so I attended several meetings as well. I'm going to try to keep everything brief. The one thing I did with Commissioner Berg and Commissioner Imdek was I also attended that Kansas County Lake Seminar. It was hosted by, I believe, the Soil and Water Conservation District, and Margaret did a great job hosting that, and she brought in a lot of different people, like Commissioner Berg said, DNR. We even had Planning and Zoning, Eric Van Dyken, and he explained the permitting process basically, and how they do want to work with people, and not to do things on your own before consulting them, because like he said, we wear a white hat and a black hat, but we prefer the white hat. We don't want to wear the black hat and come down and punish people if they don't follow the rules, which it's very understandable. And then like he presented it, it's part, it all ties in with Soil and Water Conservation District, because they want to maintain good quality water for the lakes. And so if people abuse that, you can endanger the lake itself. So that was that seminar. That was just an optional thing, but I thought it was very appropriate since I'm on the Aquatic Invasive Species Task Force. And then I attended the UCAP meeting May 23rd. That was basically a routine meeting, except we did have issues Zooming, and so they had to kind of do a hybrid type of Zoom meeting where they had somebody's phone, and so people could hear them, and it's sometimes Zoom meetings just don't work very well, but they made it work. Then yesterday was a broadband, EDC broadband meeting. Pretty much everything is kind of going very well. We have a lot of projects now going on in the county. In my area, there's southeast fiber to the place or home, and that'd be East Lake Lillian and Lake Elizabeth townships. They are underway, I guess you could say. They're making a lot of progress, and it's very encouraging to see that we are going to get broadband in those areas. And then I think it's Fallen Township is going to get going this year. They were just given the go-ahead, or got granted the money, and they're going to have it hopefully done sometime this year, and which is kind of amazing to get started and completed all in the same year that they were given a grant. And then also there's Harrison Township. That one I believe is going to be completed mid-June. So it's nice to see that we're getting a lot of fiber optic put into the area for high-speed internet. And then, let's see, I also attended the County Extension Committee meeting yesterday with Commissioner Dale Anderson, and I ended up being the chair because the regular chair had another commitment. But that went really well, and it's nice to see that we got a couple people that work for the county or for the Extension Service now that are really ambitious, and they're doing a great job getting activities and stuff going on. And I found out that there's a pie event. They're going to show people how to make pies, which sounded really good. So anyway, but that's just kind of a side note. And then I wasn't able to attend the Vision 24 meeting yesterday because that overlapped with my County Extension Committee meeting, and I figure since County Extension only meets 3 times a year, it was I wanted to go to that meeting, so I can hopefully catch up next time with Vision 2040 when I go next month, so.
All right, thank you. Couple of calendar items between now and our next meeting. District 6 meeting is next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, at Rambo's in New London. I think that ended up on the same day, unfortunately, as the Employee Appreciation Day. A little disappointed in that, but, you know, it happens. Anything else for the calendar that we should be reminded of? All right, with that, we are adjourned.